have testimonies?
Raga has it, Sophie has it, Elias has
Yeah,
it.
it does. Where should we stand before sit? Before
You can sit
But then I also need to get like when they switch to but I found like a nice angle from that side, but it's hard because I have to like move around. Because I don't know. I got just I don't know. It's not nice.
You're the only one with camera today?
Like Catherine can join us next. I don't know how am I I want a brownie now.
No, he's actually in and also he goes I don't know why I don't know
And then when you come back to the
slowly but surely take their seats. All right. Very, very warm welcome from all of us at GHRD at the Housing Vulnerability Talk 2022. Very first time that we're doing this kind of an event. Also, a warm welcome to the viewers who joined us online in the live stream. I don't have a lot to say. I'm going to give my floor immediately to the one great mind behind the vulnerability report, my colleague Kibbeljan Jevenbuken. She is the coordinator of the Team Middle East at GHRD and the primary author. So please give a warm round of applause for her. One more thing before she kills me, that I forgot to say that. You've all found a testimony on your chairs. These are answers of our housing vulnerability survey. So if there are typos, that's not us. That is from the original survey. We wanted to stay true to the voices as much as possible. We will come back later to the testimony. So now, round of applause for my colleague.
Thank you very much, Lina, for introducing me, and everyone, thank you so much for coming. Hi, my name is Kibbeljan. I am, like Lina just said, the coordinator and head researcher for Team Middle East at Global Human Rights Defense. And I would like to start by telling you the story of how Global Human Rights Defense started working on the issue of housing vulnerability. So I arrived in the Netherlands on the 22nd of August, all wide-eyed and excited. I was moving to a different country. I did not know what was to come. So it has been roughly 3 months since I arrived here, and I have had to move 5 times. I am moving again on the 15th of December, and again on the 9th of January. I am still unregistered, so for those who don't know, once you arrive in the Netherlands from a different country, you need to register in the first 5 days of your arrival if you intend to stay longer than 4 months here. If you are unregistered, you can't have a bank account, you can't work, you can't have health insurance, and many, many other things. So, in order to find a place where I could register, well, the laws and regulations for registration are very elaborate and very confusing. So a lot of places where you find that you can stay, you cannot register. In order to find a place where I could register, I signed up for a lot of different housing, rental websites on the internet, such as Kamernet, Rental Law, Voorstonds, Kamerkamp, I still don't know how to say that one. So these websites require you to pay around 30 euros a month to subscribe to them, to be able to send messages to the landlords. I have paid around 600 euros to these websites and sent countless messages to landlords, and I have not received one message back from any landlords ever. So when that happens, what you do is you go on Facebook and to some WhatsApp groups. I'm in a WhatsApp group that is called Homeless Folk. On Facebook pages for housing and WhatsApp groups, you have people who are subletting, usually, along with your usual scammer, sexual predators, by the way, So people who are subletting they don't want their landlords to know that they are subletting because they're so scared that their rental contracts will be in jeopardy. This means that if you are subletting, you're not going to have an actual rental contract. It's just going to be some WhatsApp messages between the person subletting to you and you, where the agreement will be. I am actually a lawyer. I'm an attorney at law, registered at Ankara Bar Association. I am a PhD student in public law. I have not one but 2 master's degrees in law, and I have yet to see a rental contract here. I have been kicked out of places. I have been told to leave in 2 days for no reason because I did not have a contract. And even if I know my rights, I cannot assert them because if I don't accept the conditions that the people subletting to me tell me to accept, I'm out on the street. So then, sorry. I'm sorry, I dropped the thing. So then, in the 3 months that I have been here, there has not been a day when housing was not a constant issue in my mind, causing me incessant stress and despair. And that is why we are here today, because there are thousands of people around us as we speak, experiencing the exact same thing. Many in the audience, I'm sure of it. And another reason that we're here today is I was telling the chairman of my organization, Mr. Sital, about the stress that I was having, and he told me, well, Kıvılcım, then you do realize that we're running a human rights organization here, right? Do something about it. And that is how we started the 2022 GHRD Housing Vulnerability Survey. In 1 month, we received 222 responses. The results we received were shocking. 25% of the respondents to our survey were either unsafe or unregistered where they resided at the time when they answered our survey. And so most of the questions to our survey were actually open-ended because we wanted to collect stories, and we have collected stories. I would actually like to invite some of my colleagues up on stage now to read you some of the testimonies that we have received, just to honor the stories that people have had. Testimonies. Please.
So we want to read you a couple of testimonies submitted to our website of very common stories that people go through in the Netherlands and the struggles that they get put through to get simple housing that should be legal, safe, and simple. I think it's generally harder to find accommodation as a non-Dutch citizen / non-Dutch speaking person. I think generally every student is vulnerable to exploitation due to the situation of the housing market. There are so many people looking for housing that the landlords can basically do whatever they want because they know they will find tenants no matter what conditions they put in the contract or how the apartment looks like. My landlords have uttered the phrase, if you don't like it here, you're welcome to leave and look for something else. Many times when I complain about something, they obviously know that I won't do that since it's nearly impossible to find something else in the Netherlands. The leakage in the apartment started in mid-August. Since then there was a risk of electrocution and I could not access the microwave nor the washing machine. It got so dangerous and dysfunctional, I was forced to leave and stay at somebody else's house. All that time, I was still paying for the apartment I could not live in, until I was kicked out for asking for some money back, as it was just fair and simple.
Overall, the process of finding houses was incredibly stressful and overwhelming since you are on the brink of being homeless 2 weeks before your university programs resumes. And my university even suggests that students who do not find a place by August 15th should consider dropping out. For me, the biggest issue was my student status, the extremely high prices, and definitely finding a house with registration. That was the hardest problem for me. I am registered now, but I live with 2 unregistered persons, and it is really stressful for me, and especially for them. In Amsterdam, you usually have 2 registrations per property, which is absolutely ridiculous since it is largely a student city and students often share accommodations together. It was extremely unfortunate seeing properties with 3 or 4 bedrooms and only 2 people allowed to rent. I came across so many scammers, I wasted so many hours looking. The level of stress was extreme. I thought I would just drop out if I didn't find the last-minute solution.
The testimonies I'm going to read to you are the testimonies we put aside from queer people specifically. The first one, I was denied a room because of my nationality, Colombian, once. And I also found it hard to find places being a trans woman because I felt most time people or landlords would not take my application seriously. My current situation is very far from ideal. It is a very small room without a window and no common areas outside of the toilet, a tiny shower, and a tight hallway kitchen. But it offers me registration and is not explicitly queerphobic, which is my only other option at the time was. Searching for housing was the most taxing and frustrating time of my life, so I am hesitant to try and find a better place. I exhausted every single option that was available to me, and informal Facebook agreements were my best, most reliable bet in the end. even though it could have gone very wrong, with anyone being able to offer a room at any price and set up whatever rules and requirements they desire, knowing that at least 20 people would be desperately begging to receive the room. Because I am also queer in terms of gender and sexuality, it is very difficult for me to decipher the safety and potential new housing options. I am part of a queer housing Facebook group through which I have found my current place. I believe myself vulnerable due to the amount of time I have been searching, and more recently without proper housing, as well as all the stress associated with it. I have 2 legal nationalities, Polish and Slovak. I identify as bisexual and non-binary, and don't consider returning home as an option due to homophobia and transphobia back home. I have middle-income parents, but myself make minimal wage and take student loans. I am a full-time student on top of everything.
Thank you very much, guys, for reading some of the testimonies. There are more testimonies in our report. At the end of the survey, we, of course, wrote the 2022 G30 Housing Vulnerability Report, which is available actually on the desk right over there outside the door. It is interesting. I would be happy if you would read it, because in the report, yes, we have a lot of testimonies and also a lot of facts and figures about the survey. What this is about is actually, it's about the right to adequate housing. The right to adequate housing, however, is one of the economic, social, and cultural rights, and economic, social, and cultural rights are subject to something that we call progressive realization. When a right is subject to progressive realization, you can only hold states accountable for taking steps to the maximum of their available resources to achieve the full realization of the right. So we cannot ask the government of the Netherlands to house all of us, obviously. However, our survey and other surveys which have been conducted in the Netherlands have proven that there might be widespread discrimination in search for housing in the Netherlands. Having a non-Dutch name, being a student, being part of the LGBTQIA+ community, nationality, race, skin color, gender can all be marginalizing factors which contribute to what we call housing vulnerability. And when it's the right to non-discrimination, the state has an obligation to, stemming from several international human rights instruments, take immediate action to uphold the right to non-discrimination. This is not subject to progressive realization. The state has to do something about it now. In fact, one of the questions in our survey asked our respondents what marginalizing factors they thought were making them vulnerable in their search for housing, and out of the 157 who answered this question, 65 reported that they believed their nationality was a factor, 52 said it was their student status, 20 mentioned their age, another 20 their gender, 8 their race, 33 their low income level, 6 their LGBTQIA+ status, 13 their non-Dutch speaking status. And the thing to keep in mind is that these marginalizing factors, they can be compounded. If one possesses more than one marginalizing factor, then it is even more unlikely that they will find adequate housing. What was really interesting to me with the survey was that respondents were mostly aware of the marginalizing factors making them more vulnerable. What they didn't know was where to seek help when they were faced with discrimination, or even other things, such as being scammed. They did not know where to go. Another thing was, many respondents were unaware of their rights, which made them wide open, vulnerable to exploitation. But even when they knew their rights, they were very reluctant to assert those rights because they were afraid that they would be evicted and never find another place ever again. Another interesting finding was that, as we've discussed before, the laws and regulations for registration, they were so confusing to everybody. Nobody knew what was going on, and people who lived in places unregistered thought they were doing something illegal, so they were even more hesitant to reach for the help that is already available to them. So, one last thing, what is the government of the Netherlands doing about all of this? They are actually doing things. They do acknowledge that there is a housing crisis, and they do acknowledge that there is discrimination in the housing market. the 2022 National Action Plan on Human Rights identifies some steps to reveal the discrimination in the housing market and some steps to take to make the situation better. There is another action plan, the 2022 National Student Housing Action Plan, which foresees to increase the supply of housing for students. They will actually build 60,000 more student housing units by 2030, which is great, they're increasing supply, but they have also decided to decrease demand. And the way that they have decided to do that seems a little problematic to me. And we actually have some of the people who have drafted the said action plan here today. So with that, I will invite Lina to invite our speakers on stage so we can talk about it further.
Thank you, Kiljun. Okay, I have the great job to invite the speakers, as Kiljun said. First of all, please, round of applause again for the great team doing the report and doing the survey. Thank you very much. Okay, so we now heard there is a problem. We now heard what Kiljun has experienced. Thank you for sharing that. Now let's hear what the speakers have to say about that. First of all, Eddie Steehouwer, the Ombudsman of The Hague and the Director of Den Haag Meld in the Discrimination Center, please join us on stage if you want. Second one is Yola Leby, the Director of Kansas, the Knowledge Center for Student Housing. I'm looking at my colleague that I'm not too fast. The third one will be a video intervention. He will not be joining us in person, but he made a video submission about the right to housing, which is Dr. Koldo Kasla, lecturer at the University Essex School of Law and the Director of the Human Rights Center at that very university. Round of applause for Now, leaving me to Talita Dieleman. She's the representative of the Dutch Student Union, very sorry, and the board member of the European Students Union. And then, last but not least, Mika Kraft, also sitting up here in front, the member of the PvdA group and City Council of Nijmegen, young politician and also very much involved in the housing crisis. Please join us. All right, I think that's it from my side. Enjoy the talk, and I think you're in good hands. Have fun.
Thank you. Please, no. Oh, it's okay.
Oh, yeah. Part of introduction. Maybe you have something. Yeah.
I will take a seat from here.
No, wait.
Or I can actually just moderate. Stand up.
Thank you very much.
Everybody. Now that we have our speakers here, let us begin. Well, we have many different perspectives here today, actually. So I would like to start by asking you how you, from your specific perspective, experience the housing crisis. I would like to start by Ms. Adi Steehouwer, who is the Ombudsman of The Hague. Yes, I will give you this.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. And I'm very pleased that you made a report on the housing problem already, and that you're a lawyer. Because I'm a lawyer too. I'm working for the anti-discrimination body in the city of The Hague, but I can speak on behalf of all my colleagues throughout the country that we have these anti-discrimination bodies not for sitting somewhere in an office, but for helping people. In The Hague we do it in the libraries, so who's living in The Hague, you can visit us in the libraries. I'll have some information if you want that later on. But I also had a picture from one of our newspapers, and it's up there. Okay, it's a it's from the NRC, newspaper in the Netherlands. The R is for Rotterdam, and it is from today, and it tells the story of a young student who has been visiting Amsterdam. She loves the city. Then she goes back to her country and she sees this advertisement of an exchange program of students with the Netherlands. It's not in Amsterdam, but in Utrecht, and she has heard that Utrecht is almost as nice as Amsterdam. So she signs up for this program, and she comes to the city of Utrecht. And it says in this cartoon that she was looking for a house, a room, and she found all these advertisements saying no internationals. So she had to look somewhere else, and in the end you see her sitting in quite a cozy room, but she rented it for 3 weeks, paying 1,000 euros. Well, she can see this beautiful tower in Utrecht, but that's all. My anti-discrimination body had somebody coming up to us telling about these signs, no internationals. And you already pointed out, Kivijam, how these international laws are, but we have also a Dutch constitution and some laws going along with that. And I'm not going to teach you about this, but I'm going to tell you that having a sign when you advertise a room to be let, and you say no internationals, it's forbidden in our country. So if you come to an anti-discrimination body, if you have an advertisement like that, or the landlord says, oh, you look nice, but you are an international, or I don't like your skin color, or your gender, or all the other things you mentioned, it is forbidden. So we had 2 procedures, because it's not happening one time, but lots of times. In the first case, we had our human rights institution point out to the landlord that it was forbidden, and with that advice of our national human rights body, we convinced another landlord that he cannot discriminate upon these students. That's what an anti-discrimination body can do. So I hope that you just remember one thing, and that is there is an app, and it's called in Dutch, so it's discriminatie, not discrimination, discriminatie.nl, and there you can quite easily send your message, and the anti-discrimination body in your city will help you on that case. I have a lot more to say, but I wanted to point out that discrimination is forbidden by refusing somebody because he is international or anything else. If you remember that from this day, it's for me it's a success.
Thank you very, very much. Actually, what is a problem, the way that I see it, is that yes, there is help available. However, the people who need that help do not know about it. They are not told. Actually, with this, I think we can go to Mr. Lita Dillemans, because in the survey, a lot of students have said that they approach their universities with the problems that they're having, and the universities they just do not reply. They're very dismissive. What do you think universities are doing? Can they do more? Does the Dutch Student Union get a lot of requests of help from students?
Yeah, the Dutch Student Union does get a lot of requests from students, a lot of complaints, similar things such as surveys like yours, where people have explained that, they're either couch hopping, sleeping at bus stations, hostels, I mean, you name it, all the statements that you see on your chairs, that's what a lot of students are going through. But I would like to say that the university is really taking a distant approach to this housing crisis. I think it's kind of like, yeah, we're providing the education, and they're not really looking that, housing also comes with that. If internationals are traveling from far, that's not something that they can organize from a distance. And yeah, since recently, a lot of universities have communicated that if you don't have accommodation, either drop out or stay home until further notice. And they're also not really offering an online option to education, so they're kind of just saying, if you don't have a place, that's not our responsibility. And yeah, I think that's a huge problem. I think that's a responsibility that should be taken upon by universities themselves. But they're not doing absolutely nothing. They are working also with the National Action Plan, together with also the Dutch Student Union, municipalities, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and a lot of other parties as well, to kind of put pressure on ministries to take action. And like you mentioned, there are going to be 60,000 new student rooms available, but that's also within the next 8 years. So there are things being done, but like I said, really, they really are taking a very distant approach, unfortunately.
Thank you. Well, talking about the National Student Housing Action Plan, we have Ms. Yolanda B. here. Could you please tell us what you do exactly at Kansas and how you perceive the problem from your perspective, and also the process that led to the drafting of the National Student Housing Action Plan? What were your requests? What were you able to negotiate?
Maybe you can repeat this one once again. But I'm a director of Kansas, and Kansas advocates for more affordable social housing in the Netherlands, and we are a knowledge center as well. And I'm the chair of the National Platform Student Housing. So that's what you mentioned as well. And I think you asked my point of view on the housing crisis. It's, well, the housing crisis you are dealing with is part of a national crisis. It's really a problem for everyone in Holland, I would say. So it's the problem is just very big, and it's very difficult to build enough student rooms. And well, I think it's very important to say this because lots of people, they just they can't make very important life choices because of the lack of houses. So it's really a problem, and yeah, so it's yeah. What was your other question?
The second question was about the National Student Housing Action Plan. What
Yeah.
was the process that led to it? What were your requests? What were you able to negotiate? How did that happen?
Yeah, we negotiated really a lot of things. I also took some notes because there are so many topics in this action plan, but maybe it's important to just tell something about the most important points in this situation. It's true, we are, well, I think the responsibility universities take for the housing problem is improving. That's really what we have to say. So it was and also the Ministry of Education, they are taking more and more responsibility for the problem. So I think it's positive. And even it's for you, it's not enough right now. I understand, but it's really changing. So I'm grateful for that. And the other thing, the universities, and yes, manage the inflow. Yes, that's one of our topics. It's the one we start with. To be honest, yes.
Could I actually maybe present it to the audience as well, what the plan is? So the National Student Housing Action Plan, the first thing on the list that they're going to do is to reduce the amount of international students that are coming in. However, the plan clearly states out that they cannot have European Union and European Economic Area students have the right to access to education that is lesser than Dutch students. So they will not touch European Union and European Economic Area students. It will only be international students who will be there will be quotas for international students coming in. How would you actually, yes, how would you, Ms. Adi, say our word? How do you think this could be achieved without amounting to discrimination? Could it?
Try the European Court on Human Rights, because these are these non-discrimination laws are not explicitly for the EU and its partners. I think you should take a case to the court there. But that's the lawyer's answer. The problem, of course, I agree with Yolanda B, is for everybody in the Netherlands. Youngsters are looking for houses even if they're not students. And that's of course a problem, and it is something to do with climate change and biodiversity, and I don't know what stikstof is in other languages, but I think you recognize the word. So everything depends on everything. But that means that every individual student who comes to the Netherlands we have the institutions here to take care of them, that they were equally treated. So that everybody who comes here needs to be welcomed and not discriminated upon.
Thank you very much. Ms. Yolanda B, what would you like to say about how this has been formulated in the National Action Plan? I'm interested in knowing how they are planning to do this without amounting to discrimination. Was this talked about when the...
You're talking about the managing the inflow?
Yes.
Yes, without
exactly.
discrimination, yeah. Well, I think, first of all, we were discussing in this platform what the causes are of this shortage of houses. And one of them is that universities have the strategy to, they want more and more students from Holland, but from other countries as well. And it's very difficult. I am responsible for the houses, and it's very difficult to keep pace with this very, how do you say, the increase of shortage or whatever. How do you say that? My English is not as good as the most people here, but I'm trying. So it's very hard to keep pace, and we really ask the Ministry of Education and universities to communicate with us. And therefore, this is one of our plans. We really have to be more in control of the amount of students, because everyone is dealing with the same problem, and not in that, they say, not you have, for international people it's more difficult than for Dutch people, that's for sure. So I think it's very, well, I think to discriminate less, I think it's important. We have to control the inflow, because the shortage is really too high. That's the reason. But I feel responsible for all these stories as my role as of chair of the platform, of course. So I will really put this on the agenda, and we already do, but we will do it more. Well, we will take more time for it, and yeah.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
very much.
That's why I'm here. So I think it's very important.
Actually, the Dutch Student Union was also one of the parties that drafted the National Student Housing Action Plan, and I have actually interviewed someone from the Dutch Student Union before Goise. She could not be with us today. She was actually supportive of the quotas on international students. I would maybe like to know what the Dutch Student Union thinks about it in general as well.
Yeah, so I'm pretty new to the organization, and I personally didn't get the impression that they were for that as well. I think when we looked at the statistics as well, it shows that more than 70% of international students are from the European Union and the European Economic Area. So maybe also a question directed to you is that 30% of international students that are not within that area is really going to make a difference? I mean, we're already in such a bad stage with the shortage. Yeah, I would like to maybe hear your take on that.
Sorry,
That more than 70% of students are within Europe of international students, so that means that the cap that you're putting on international students, that would only leave 20 to 30% that are not within the European Economic Area. So is it logical?
No, but there are other measures you can take. Of course, I don't think the main measure will be that we will not allow people from out of Europe not to come here. I think we can change the language of studies, of course, and I think this will happen more often.
Actually, they haven't done anything about it yet. This is just the action plan. What's going to happen soon? Oh,
Sorry. And there is another thing, because many universities are asking people. They are very active to ask foreign students to come to Holland, and I think
you
they
pay a lot of tuition, by the way.
they are signing. The picture is not. How do you say? They are showing a more beautiful picture than we can offer here. So that's the other thing. They have to be less active, really.
Yes, and actually, the Minister of Education will, in the new year, it says in the beginning of the new year, come up with the plan of putting quotas on international students. So we don't know what's actually going to happen yet. But when it comes out, we can talk about it again. So with that, I would actually like to ask Mr. Mika Kraft here, as a politician who is working on housing a lot, how he perceives the problem from his perspective.
Well, thank you so much, and also thank you for inviting me to this talk.
Thank you for coming.
So, my position, I am active for the local political party PvdA in Nijmegen. I'm not an elected councillor myself, but I support councillors, and I'm a representative in debates on also housing. And I just recently finished studying in Nijmegen myself, so that's my background. And what we see, the housing crisis is a big crisis that hits almost everyone, but more importantly, also what we've seen in the testimonies, which are very impressive, thank you for that too, is that it enhances existing inequalities. People who are suffering from being different in a certain way are hit extra hard by this housing crisis, and that's one of the biggest problems with it. So one of the groups, which is in my hometown of Nijmegen, really hard hit by the housing crisis, international students. And what we see is on multiple levels that there are barriers, as well as on policy level, as well as in the Dutch student culture, which limits the entrance to proper decent housing. And what we try to do is to push this issue to the local municipality agenda of the city council to take control over this issue and take responsibility. Because what we see right now is that there are different institutions, the educational institutions, the municipality and the housing corporations, who are looking at each other in order to take responsibility and refuse to take action on their own. So what we see, the university says, yeah, we are responsible for the access of education, but we are not responsible for the housing of students. the municipality says, yeah, but we have no control over who comes studying in the city, and the student housing says, yeah, we are dependent on other institutions for our ability to house students. And we believe as a local political faction that the municipality needs to take more control and also bring institutions together to coordinate the access to housing, because housing is a right, but right now, because of marketization of the housing market, we see it has become a luxury, and that really needs to end.
Thank you very much. Would any of our other speakers like to say anything about how maybe these different bodies could work better together? How could steps be taken so somebody would take responsibility?
Yeah, I think on the national level we really take responsibility. It really changed last year. So, but we need to cooperate on the level of every city. So that's the next step, I think. But I think we with the National Action Plan, we really randvoorwaarden, what's that? Conditions. Yeah, I think on the national platform that we have. Yeah, so that's the first step, I think. But it's very difficult. I think it's unique. We have this action plan, which with all these parties, it was difficult yeah, I'm very tired. My mother is very bad, and I just slept. I didn't sleep very well this night. So, but I don't know.
Maybe if I can support your message right now, because
Sorry?
if I can support your message, because I do think good things are happening, and also sometimes it just comes down to well-meant policies not being in line with the needs of international students. And if I can maybe tell about a case where in Nijmegen there's this program where when international students start studying in Nijmegen, they get a fixed contract for a room with furniture by the Student Housing Corporation, which is a great system to ensure that most people, because there's not enough for everyone, but most people get a room for at least 1 year when they enter, and I also think such programs are much needed. But what we do see is also that it's actually a system more suited towards exchange students and not towards students who are planning on staying here on long term. So it's for 1 year and 1 year only, when it's not allowed to stop your contract prior to the end of 1 year. It's not allowed to sublet your room except for very strict conditions.
Yes. But they still do, by the way.
They still do, but it's not. But it's illegal, and it's a reason for you to lose your housing, maybe, or at least that's how it's communicated. And I think it's very important when this action plan is conducted. It's really also that there's participation from people who have the experience, who know how well-meant policies can also actually work.
Yeah.
And I think I really believe good things are happening, but this is also one example of something that really should work for international students, but then ends up having serious problems for them, even stopping them from studying here.
Yeah, we know this problem. We really know and see it, and we are working to solve the problem. So it's one of the 5 main topics in the plan. So yes.
Can we say something about cooperation?
To stretch it more to the cooperation with the local governments, vulnerability is not only not getting a room, but we heard also stories about those people who get a room, have to pay for it, not only in euros, but also with other services. it is so important. It is of big importance. First was translated Dutch. It's of big importance that people step out and tell this. Mr. Seaton and I were talking about what the problems are for people to go directly to the police. My message is you can get some support going to the police to talk about what we call this kind of misuse of students. And if you do it through the institutions that are part of the local government, like an anti-discrimination body, I'm not advertising for it, and it doesn't cost you any money, but it is so important because it's not known to everybody.
Absolutely.
We have this campaign today that we interviewed people at the central station, and nobody knows about the anti-discrimination body. To come back to this issue, you can use these bodies as the coordination between all kinds of action that the local government can do, that the police can do. So we can support people in going to the police, but we can also, if you need to prove that the landlord is taking misuse of you. But for us, you don't have to prove it, but we can address it to landlords. We can give these kind of stories to the politicians, especially the aldermen. Aldermen, the word for better? Yes. Okay, to the aldermen involved, and then something happens, because like every other big city, The Hague has also a program on getting behind those doors where these kind of things happen. They only need the signals that it is happening. So I want to have people who stand up, not to do this on their own, but use these kind of institutions that are part of the local government, but they are there for you. And you can come to us. We have contacts with the police, so we can take cases to the police. We have contacts with lawyers who are specialized in this kind of field. And I want to address to you that I had a contact with one of the lawyers I know best and who I send a lot of cases to. And he said, Ali, please tell them that I got for this lady living in the Netherlands illegally, who was the victim of misuse by her landlord. I went to the court here in The Hague, and he, and together with this lawyer, it stopped, because she took it to court. And it can be done with an interim measure, so it can be done in a few weeks. So use your power, use the power of the people, because the Dutch institutions, I know I've been traveling all over the world, sometimes you cannot trust the police, and I understand it. Sometimes you cannot trust the government. But in the Netherlands, we are still high-ranking in this trustworthy institutions. So please send a message that you don't have to do it on your own, but you are the one, and the people you know are the ones who can show us what is happening behind those doors. And then the anti-discrimination bodies in the Netherlands can help.
Absolutely. This was actually one of the conclusions that we reached in our report. It is that people who are experiencing housing vulnerability have no idea that there is help available, and we need to build a bridge between the people who have the problem and the available help. That's the missing point right there. People do not know that help is available. Even if they do, they're hesitant to reach out. That is why I was especially interested in the hotline that Mr. Mika Kraft here has helped start in their own city council.
Yeah, so we pushed this issue on the agenda, and in the debates that followed, one of the first actions the municipality has taken is to participate with Vizier, which is an anti-discrimination body in the east of the Netherlands, to set up a hotline specifically for international students who are coping with discrimination when finding housing, for two reasons. First of all, to make sure people get adequate help, to get in contact with police or other institutions that can help them come up for their rights. But also, second of all, and this is for the municipality very important, to get a scope of how big this discrimination issue is. We've had letters to the council noting down a whole list of possible sources where they've seen discrimination happen, but always ending with the conclusion, but we have no idea how big the problem is and if it's of any significance. We have no way of telling if it is of any significance. And so that is something that was, for my part, really hard to deal with, because we know it's an enormous problem, but we don't have the evidence to get the means in order to address it. So yeah, we really hope that this hotline will serve those two goals. Also, yeah, to come up with solution for on the long terms and to really address the problem for what it is.
How has it been going though with the hotline? Do you receive a lot of calls?
Well, we are not the ones executing the hotline,
Yes,
so we are really waiting for these results. We don't get regular updates on it, but it has started in the end of August with the start of a new study year where a lot of people are looking for housing. We hoped it would start earlier because a lot of people look for housing during the summer holidays, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. But it will be on the political agenda again, and then we really want to know what are we seeing from this hotline. Is it reaching the people that needs to be reached, and also who can help to expand that reach? What can we do as political parties? How can universities or universities of applied sciences be involved better? All these questions need to be addressed now in order to prevent the same thing from happening again, what happened last year and the year before that, where people just end up being homeless.
Absolutely. I wonder if universities could be more involved in letting their students know that there is help that is available to them, at least when students reach out to them asking for help. Universities just tell them, well, just go back home then, drop out of your studies, instead of directing them to the help that is available. What would you think, Talita, as a representative of the Dutch Student Union, on how to mobilize universities and make them help us?
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a difficult question because, I mean, you don't already, there's not a lot of information. So I studied at Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and I just graduated. And obviously it was also during COVID, so yeah, I mean, even just in terms of COVID, you know, there was not a lot of resources or for students, you know, so yeah, in terms of personal experience, it's quite difficult to say, but yeah, I don't know, I think it's important maybe for, you know, such things as a hotline to maybe email universities and make it clear to them, or I think it would be actually better if you directly contact the diversity and inclusion representatives of universities, because in my experience, that's where I've received a lot of help, because I was previously the president of the African Association at my university. And yeah, when we had any problems to do with discrimination and lack of representation, I mean, we didn't go to the dean, we didn't go to the top levels, we went directly to the people who are in charge of diversity and inclusion, because they will take it seriously and they will take action. You know, they've opened up, you know, pop-up living rooms on campus, you know, dealing with the mental health issues of students. So I really think with this case, it could really help as well, you know, just in the middle of the university, there could be banners, there could be, you know, also there was a lot of hotline centers as well, but for mental health, if people are struggling. So mental health, I feel like this could be, we could replicate the same approach that, you know, a lot of universities have taken with mental health, and do it, I guess, with housing as well, because people are just simply unaware that these things exist. And the Dutch Student Union as well, they offer a service that students can come and cross-check their contracts with the union, and they'll be able to tell them if they're getting a fair rate, because a lot of the times you are scammed or you're paying way more than you need to be paying based on, probably a cupboard, like somebody said earlier, without a window, and you're paying 1,000 euros. So, this service as well, it's pretty inactive, unfortunately. So, yeah, there's so much out there, people are doing things. So I think, yeah, taking the same approach for mental health and replicating it.
Talking about, oh, sorry, please.
Sorry, yeah, I think it's very, very good, all these actions. I think it's even, but it's a little bit reactive. I think we have to work on prevention of this problem, and maybe, well, I'm a representative of the social housing company, so for me it's easy to say, well, I think we are working completely following the legislation here. But for instance, we have Kamernet, just mentioned, and maybe we should say that they are responsible for the lessers they are representing, like we are for our lessers, and why I think they should take more responsibility because they know what's happening. Maybe not on this scale, and not that it's such a big problem, but they know that it's happening. So and well, they are also in our platform. So maybe we really have to talk about this with them. So I think maybe this will have more is more effective. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's really important, but also the most difficult question I have with this whole issue, and I also don't know the answer to it. We are dealing right now with explicit discrimination, putting on your advertisement, no internationals, women only, this or that, 21 plus, etc. But when you ban that, you still have the cultural problem of people choosing, and it's not only landlords, it's also students themselves choosing their own housemates, and they will always, well, not always, but a lot of students really are learned to look for difference in their housemates. I'm sorry, I said wrong. For sameness, for similarity. They are looking for people like them because it feels safe, it feels nice, and there's an abundance of students like them who are looking for a room so they can ban difference. And the biggest challenge we have as a society, and no one on its own can save this, is also can do this on its own, is valuing difference for what it is, living together with people from different perspectives, different backgrounds. From my experience, it's such a valuable thing to be abroad, to meet other people, to live together with other people, and we really need this cultural change where we value it for what it is, and only then we can really stop this issue of discrimination. We can ban it on the surface, we can enforce it, and it's needed, it's important, but if we cannot work together and make this shift, we will always deal with this.
I fully agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. Yes. We are discussing this whole thing. We call it hospiteren. You all know this word, I think. It's really Dutch. I don't know if there's another country which is doing it by hospiteren. Anywhere else? No. So I think it's really a tradition here in Holland. But we are discussing this way of selection with our CEOs, our members with our members. But you see there is a lot of resistance to change this way of selection. Yes.
But also because of this, we trust housing corporations more with the responsibility to deal with this than individual students and commercially rented houses. So that's also why, as a political party in Nijmegen, we really plead for a bigger share of housing be executed by these corporations instead of the commercial markets.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, maybe I have very positive news because we are working with our social housing companies on a digital portal where you can find houses of our organization, and it will be launched in the end of next year or maybe the year after.
Oh, that is
But
wonderful. I can't wait
yeah,
for that.
yeah, so that's really a transparent and well, an honest system, I think. So that would be for the market parties as well. Maybe it will give more balance in the market because we have more an identity than we have right now. Carmenet is far more reachable, I think, for you, and you can find it much more easier than if you want to rent a social housing organization. It's really difficult to find, I think.
Yes.
Nowadays, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
then we would have universities disseminating the information that
Yeah.
this is available.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, with that, actually, we also have. Oh, would you like to say something first? Yes, please.
Maybe two positive things. I've been talking to housing corporations this last month about what non-discrimination is supposed to be for them, and there I learned that there is a lack of knowledge. So we have preventive programs or educational programs. The anti-discrimination bodies were given more money. It should be better, but to do these kind of programs, so we can give them the expertise on what non-discrimination means. And the other thing is, I'm looking around. Maybe I'm the only one with grandchildren, but I learned that they get more teaching in school on non-discrimination. So there is some hope for the future.
For the next generation.
Thank you very much. I wanted to say we actually have one more panelist, one more speaker today who could not be with us because he lives in the UK, Dr. Koldo Kasla. He has agreed to send us a little video talking about the right to adequate housing because that is his specialty. So we do have an academic perspective to what is ideal. Let's listen to him.
Hello, my name is Koldo Kasla. I'm the director of the Human Rights Centre Clinic at the University of Essex, and I'm also a lecturer in international human rights law at the same university. I've been asked to introduce briefly the right to adequate housing for the context of these events today. The right to adequate housing is recognized in a number of international treaties and international documents. Starting with Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which sets the tone of the rights and the whole machinery of international human rights since 1948. Article 25 of the Universal Declaration recognizes the rights to an adequate standard of living. Also in Article 11 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, we can find the rights to an adequate standard of living, which includes housing. This covenant, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, has been ratified by more than 170 countries from all over the world, including nearly all countries in Europe. We also find the right to housing in Article 31 of the European Social Charter, the revised version of 1996, and it is implicit, the right to housing, in Article 16 of the old version of the European Social Charter, the one from 1961. So the right to housing is recognized in several treaties, also others that I haven't mentioned. So it is there, and it is globally accepted as one of the key economic, social and cultural rights which are part of the international corpus of international human rights standards. All the right to adequate housing includes legal security of tenure, meaning the expectation for tenants for people actually living in a place that their situation is not going to be changed with no justification or with no reason. So the expectation that in principle someone should have stability where they are living. Also, because housing is more than simply 4 walls and a roof or a ceiling, the implication of the right to adequate housing is that it has to be adequate, it has to be habitable, so it must meet the requirements of fitness for habitation. It must also be affordable, policies must be put in place to ensure that those who cannot afford housing in the private sector can pay for it with support from the state. And it also has to be physically and economically accessible, particularly for those who are often excluded in society. So people of low incomes, migrants or refugees. Specific policies need to be put in place by public authorities to ensure that they have actually materially access to housing. Also, the right to housing needs to be interpreted from the perspective of the principle of progressive realization. The principle of progressive realization, which is in Article 2.1 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, means that these rights, socio-economic rights like housing, need to be implemented progressively, which means that public authorities need to take steps little by little, but always in the forward direction to ensure that the protection of these rights increases over time, that people living in a country have greater enjoyment of socio-economic rights, including the rights to housing. It also means that, in principle, steps backwards in the protection or the enjoyment of the right to housing are not consistent with international human rights, unless the government can prove that it is only a temporary measure and it is proportionate, and also that the rights of people who are most vulnerable are always protected. At the end of the day, housing, like all other social rights, is about the rights that we need to be free, to be materially free, and to be able to contribute meaningfully to society. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaldakasla, if you're watching us on the live stream, for sending your video submission to us. One last question that I would have to you is the registration system. It has caused me so much stress. I don't know why. I mean, maybe you are not the right people to ask this question to, but I would ask this to anyone. Why is this system in place? Could it not be better? Why are only 2 people allowed to register in a house where there are 5 rooms? Why?
Oh, it's an easy answer. It is to protect people. Because we had this interesting lecture on your rights, and most of it is protection. So to protect your rights, to have this stable situation, that's part of the registration system in the Netherlands. But of course it's not the whole answer. Because it was done with a good intention to give this protection to people, so that rooms are not overcrowded, that people live in places that are really in the registers of the Netherlands as a house, and not as a caravan or a shed or something like that. So it's meant for protection. It is also very important because if people live in those not registered houses, the government can act, and they can forbid those people owning those sheds and caravans, forbid them to use it this way. But as I said, that's not everything, because with this housing crisis, everybody uses whatever address they can get. That's the reason why registering is not so easy in this country. On the other hand, there are possibilities within registration that can be used, and that is like you have this postal address, yeah, okay, many people know, then you're registered with the government, or the local government, or with institution associated with the government. That gives you an address where you can get all these important letters from, what did you mention, the government, your social insurance. It's also possible to do this on these postal addresses. But that means that you're still couch surfing. So it doesn't solve the other problem, but if you are not able to register because the place where you want to live is not part of this registration system, people could ask for having a postal address, so that makes that you can take care of your other rights in the Netherlands.
So I've actually tried this before. I've been to the municipality quite a few times and asked what I could do because I was not able to find a place where I could register. What they told me was I would have two options. One of them would be to register as a homeless person, and the other would be to find a friend who would let me register at a postal address at their place. Yes. However, that is a temporary solution. They tell me it's only for 3 months. And also, in order to be able to do that, I took my friend with me to the municipality, like we went quite a few times, and what we were told was that I would need to prove that I did everything in my power to register at an address, and then I couldn't, and then that's why I had to register with my friend. So then what I did was I have had some of my friends who are here actually today write testimonies for me. They wrote down, Kabutum has tried everything. I have, printed out my subscriptions to Rentola, all of the money that I have paid to all of these different websites. I have not been able to take that to the municipality yet because we had this event and I was working very hard, but I will do that next week and see, hopefully I will be able to register at my friend's address for 3 months. After that, I don't know what I'm doing. To be able to register as a homeless person, they told me, is more difficult than registering with a friend. By the way, this entire time when I wasn't able to register anywhere, I have been told by a taxi driver once, for example, that he has a house that he leaves empty. It is just for people to register, so 4 people can register there. From everyone, he takes 250 euros a month. And then the house is empty, so he doesn't have to deal with tenants. He told me, you know what, just give me 250 euros a month and I'll register you. But I already overpay way too much for my unregistered address right now, so I don't have the funds for that, but so that's how that is going.
I'm here because I have an anti-discrimination body, but I'm also an ombudsman.
Yes.
And if you have this kind of problems with the local government, in our country we have everything well organized. But the most important thing is that you have to know what we have organized and that you have to find it. So I just give you this example that filing a complaint at the ombudsman might help to make the government understand the way they can use their services for everybody who's living in the Netherlands. And then, of course, because you're from Turkish origin, you have more privileges than people who we were talking about who are more outside the European area. But somebody... Okay, tell me. What's the problem?
Excuse me for my bit
vocal.
But I think especially also when we talk about housing problems here, students or other people, undocumented people looking for a house in the Netherlands, and we have to place that in a broader context, especially here in the Netherlands, where the right on housing is in fact diminished, severely diminished the last 30, 40 years. And
there's
and then when you say all is well organized in the Netherlands, especially in the Netherlands compared with other West European countries, that you can't say, for me, you can't say that. Because that is especially the last 40 years after the agreement of Wassenaar, that is severely, in fact, abolished. Therefore, we have now also the problem of social housing. I come from Rotterdam. I mention you only the Tweebosbuurt, the UN, the Human Rights report has come to that place and said, indeed, it was a violation of the right on housing. He should come back some months ago. He couldn't make it, but I hope he will still do to see if there's something changed.
Mika already mentioned this development from social housing to more commercial housing, and that's a political reality. But the other point is, you mentioned those people who do not have documents. In French we call them sans-papiers. Even they have the right for housing. And as I already mentioned, we have all these institutions in place, but the weak point is that you who are in this situation have to reach out for these kind of institutions, and we as institutions should be more known to the public, because that's also part of it. I always want to say 3 things, and these are the first 2, and what is the third thing? That is, that we still have a lack of houses, and it's so good to know that in the future, when my grandchildren and those people born together in those same years will come for these exchange programs and to study in the Netherlands, that we hopefully have a better situation with more housing, because in the end that is the answer to almost everything. I just want to know if that somebody has an experience or has an advice for me how I could be more known. I see 2 ladies there, 3. Okay.
Well, I'm not sure if it's an advice, it's just partially thoughts, reaction to what you were saying, and maybe to also expand a bit on the previous speaker, because we are constantly talking about this well-institutionalized so-called practice of helping people in vulnerability. And yet at the same time, first of all, I heard a little bit painful syntactic way of talking about discrimination, and I come from a non-European country and I have gone through all this, and actually things are much more entangled. For example, let's not forget that while the Netherlands is very organized in their institutions, these institutions also serve as well-organized bodies to control our bodies through these practices. So for example, the fact that we stay 3 months without registration, that directly jeopardizes our right to stay. So it's a citizenship regime practices that these institutions help to actually control unwanted bodies, which we see now with this, I'm sorry to say, but very unpleasant act of planning. And I wonder how even education have not had some forms of resistance to even think that now we're thinking of the school as a commodity, that only some people have the right to access it. At the same time, you're raising a lot of labor that international students have contributed, also in the so-called visibilizing structural discrimination in this country. So how do you answer to actually, how do you think, actually, from which position are you talking also when you have this super positive future idea of your grandchildren being able to have exchange students or colleagues. Like, is that also some of our future? Like, which future are we talking about?
I'm going to answer right away, and I'm using this professor from Essex as he contributed to it. And I'm a lawyer, so I believe in laws, but as an ombudsman I found out that laws are not the only thing to solve the problems. And he's pointing out how many international agreements there are on these housing, to give you the right to housing. And he said something very important, and that is that the only thing that laws and institutions can do is to make it, I'm not going to say it in a lawyer's way, but step-by-step improvement of the situation. And that's the only answer I have, and that's why I bring in my grandchildren, because we do live in a situation where we have to improve by getting step to step to a better situation, but it's still not there. And the main thing that we have to take care of is, besides stepping forward, that there will not be stepping back and making it more difficult for students to come. And that is where we use these international courts to, like the Human Rights Court, to make that known to the government that they should improve instead of making it more difficult. But it's a fact of life.
Oh, there was a question too.
You say your grandchildren, but I was thinking about what kind of actions and solutions are now in place for the people now, not the grandchildren, but the people now that's suffering, not only the students, but like all the minorities or the refugees or just the Dutch people without housing. What kind of actions? Because we have a lot of organizations, we can communicate with each other, and we are pushing the government, of course, but what are the not the long-term solutions for the grandchildren, but what are the short-term solutions for the people now, not only the students now, but the people, all the people, the Dutch people now?
Yeah, maybe one solution, a part of a solution. We have this idea that for students, universities could place parts of dependences, how do you say, in areas where what's that thing for me?
Where there's more housing.
Yeah, where there's more housing, yes, you could say it like that, but we have Groningen and Zeeland. There are fewer and fewer people who want to live there. So why don't we have, we can spread the students much better over the country. That's a very short-term solution, I think.
Are you saying that students, if you study in The Hague, should travel every day from Groningen to here?
No. Let's say, maybe you don't know, I think, but Middelburg, it's a nice place. It's an old, it's a very old city, and it's nice. But the universities could say, okay, one of our faculties, we can have it there. Why not? There are enough houses. So
that's the long-term.
You can go bye-bye.
There is a lady in the front who would like to ask a question, I think.
I'm not asking a question. Maybe there's another solution. I didn't hear today because, for instance, if I take myself for example, my husband lives in Switzerland. My stepdaughter is with her mother, and I'm alone in my house. And I think when the war started in Russia and Ukraine, a lot of Dutch people invited other people to get them in their houses. And I think when a lot of people knew there are huge problems from students. I didn't knew it was such terrible as this. People are, how do you call it? As in their houses. So I think students can also put on the internet, social, what the problems are. I think a lot of people will think about what you have to struggle with, and maybe take for a short time students in a house. My house would be, I would like to do that.
Well, maybe I can say something about this because there's an organization. It's called Hospice Housing, and they are matching the hospita, we call it hospita in Dutch, with the students, and it's a reliable organization. So it's more and more well known in Holland, and they are increasing. So it's really a very good solution. Yes.
Oh, there was a question.
Maybe give a general response to a few the latest remarks. What I think, I see it as a political issue where the emergency that's occurring for a lot of people is not being acknowledged. So I would call to everyone suffering from this, but also seeing this happen, to call to local politicians, especially local politicians in your own city, in your own municipality, to make them aware of the crises people are going through regarding this issue. Because just before there was said that it is a political reality we live in, but politics, we live in a democracy, is run by politicians with power, who can take emergency measures, but also focus on certain aspects. When it's about housing, I really hate it, but I do believe in my hometown, we will, at the end of this summer, we probably will need emergency housing tents to help people who are kicked out of their houses or arrived without any accommodation. These are emergency measures which are terrible, but are needed. But at this moment, a lot of people are not even aware of this emergency going on.
Yeah, thank you for your yes. But my question is, I am Chinese, and I came to Netherlands in 2021. The first thing I want to talk about is the language problems, because that's a really huge problem a lot of Chinese students ever faced. Because at first we tried to find some houses on those housing platforms, but unfortunately a lot of the platforms are written in Dutch. We can't understand them, and they don't have translations to English. So after a long time of struggles, four of Chinese students, we finally find a house owned by a Chinese landlord. But there's a situation that he changed his house. He changed the structure of the house. He turns the living room into a new bedroom, so he can fit four of us in it. But it's illegal, actually, because they only allow 3 registrations in the house. So 3 months after we moved in, we received an invoice from the government. They said we have to pay an extra 900 euros for that. So me and another student, we struggled a week to negotiate with the governments to send emails to them, and finally they didn't let us pay, which is really lucky. But how we achieve that? She is a civil law student and I'm a human rights student. But the other 2 people living with us, they study engineering, they study medical science. They can't help us at all because they know nothing about the laws in Netherlands or nothing relating to human rights. So even for us it is a struggle. So what about for these students who have no idea about laws, who don't study that at all? How do they fix these situations? So the first suggestion is that all the Netherlands government social websites and those housing websites, they offer language options, no matter it's in English or French. At least it is you can provide us with the options, right? Mm-hmm. And second is for the I don't know how to say that in Dutch, but it's called housing benefits. Right now, I live alone in a single studio and I got 330 euros per month. That is pretty nice for me. But the problem is I have to be singly registered to that address. I cannot share it with other people. So when 4 of us live together, we have to pay 600 euros per month when I was in Leiden, and we can apply for this housing benefits. So I wonder if there's any chance for the Dutch government authorities to change its policies and offer more possibilities for us who live in together, sharing housing rents. We can also apply for this housing benefits. Yeah, so and secondly is
I want to talk about whether those institutions in Netherlands who have cooperations with the universities, because when I was studying Leiden University, we have a lot of workshops. We have workshops on how to get an internship, even how to form our LinkedIn profiles, but we don't have any workshop telling students how to protect your rights when you are like being like violated, you know? So I wonder if there's any chance those institutions can like organize those kind of workshops with universities together to tell those international students like where you should go and what kind of procedures you have to go through to protect your rights and which institutions you can go to. Yeah, so this is what I'm trying to say.
Maybe some short answers to your last questions. I see it as my responsibility to be more known as anti-discrimination body, so it's good advice for me to do this. And to give you a lawyer's perspective on this housing benefit, huursubsidie, it's more and more that you can ask for the government to make an exception in the case that you also offer housing to somebody else. I was talking about this protection of rights, but nowadays we need more housing, and maybe you can get your benefits or part of it, keep it, although you have somebody in the house. The Dutch government really likes you to inform about it in advance. So there will be no problems, and that's the same with those people we were talking about who offer a room in their house if they have their own business or they work. Nobody is looking into that, but if you have a pension or so you live on social security, that's the same point. Then please tell in advance at the government that you offer a room for somebody else. And these last 2 years, you see all these governments take another position and also award that you give some housing possibilities to other people. It's because of, do you know, kinderopvangtoeslag? Okay, the Dutch government found out that they have these very strict laws that lead you away from the goals that you have with the laws. And that's with your housing benefits and housing more people. Like this lady here up front said, I have a house with some extra rooms, but then they have to look at the laws, what the kind of problem is that they want to solve with the laws. And sometimes it is registration, and so they should take another position on it.
Everyone can let a room. Yes, everyone can one room is always allowed.
One thing I would like to add to that is the situation of all international students, of all students in fact, is incredibly diverse. Your situation might be completely different from any other. The one thing we know every student that studies in the Netherlands and comes to the Netherlands has in common is that they are connected to an education institute where they start. So I think that this University of Applied Science, really has this responsibility to have an active information on their students, on the position they have, and the rights they have, and what they need in order to have to make a living here as a student. So yeah, I really see the responsibilities to these education institutes to inform you about housing, inform you in advance. Don't tell you come study here, everything is great. No, be sure you can come study here, you're very welcome, but we have a housing crisis. It's very severe, it's very serious, it might be very hard for you to get housing. That's the real story, and it's not the story being told right now.
It was the first year they told this story, so I think it's
okay, yeah.
Yes, it's important.
I question in the back that's very persistent. Maybe we should let them speak first, and then, of course, you can add something. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Yeah, perhaps short. I'm a bit shocked to hear about this national action plan, because like when I came here, I thought always Dutch people are really open, and like also I faced that I was 5 weeks kind of homeless, and now I found something over hospital housing. But when you like go around in, for example, Leiden, you see a lot of houses which are empty, which are for sale. And it's not that I see that everything is like occupied. No, there are really houses which are available, but they're too expensive, and it's not possible to live there as students. So I wouldn't say that probably like manage the inflow would be the solution, but more like making houses available. I really do not understand why there is this restriction of 2 households, because I think in any other European country you can live, I don't know, with as many people as you like. And also like in the city center of Leiden, you see the student association where there are like, I don't know, 20, 30 students. I'm not sure which law calculates or restricts that. And I'm really confused about like all these laws. And for example, also like in smaller towns, there are houses available, but it's just like also like we thought like at some point that we buy a house. That's also not possible for me because I'm not Dutch and my parents do not work in the Netherlands. So all these things would make it much easier if there wouldn't be these restrictions. And yeah. Also like the sublet, I do not know why this is illegal, because like in Germany where I come from, it's also like, it's okay and it's working. And also like I never faced such a problem, because why are there that many restrictions? Is there like, I also see it not only for students, but also like for like people who are working and all the different things. And yeah, perhaps to what you said, I also considered registrating as homeless, because I was kind of 5 weeks, and actually they told me that it's not available for students, and it's like, am I not a human, or they said yeah, just for Dutch people. It's like, all right, you know, if I don't have registration, I'm not Dutch, you know, like how do you deal with that? Yeah, that's really problematic. And perhaps to the hospital housing, I think it's also a good thing, because, for example, where I live at the moment, there's like this big house, like a normal family house, and there's an old lady living. And actually she owns the whole house, and I have like a small room where I pay like 500 euros, which is great, but also like, I think Dutch people really value like their privacy, and they do not mind living in a big house alone. And I think also this is where the problem starts, like, they don't want their space occupied. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry.
We have other questions in the audience. Actually, would you like to go first, perhaps?
Do you want us to react, because it's a cultural problem? Indeed, it's a cultural problem. We are really, we find our privacy very important, yes.
That's also understandable,
yeah.
But you know, for incoming with different cultures, for example, you do not know that you can trust the police. So like also in Germany, you would never go to the police, for example, with like a housing issue or so. It's like, it's so, you know, like different to your culture, and then you do not know where to contact. Everything is in Dutch, and you feel like kind of excluded. And I think it wouldn't, like, it's, of course, it's your own, like, decision to be, you know, your own privacy and so, but I feel that Dutch people educate themselves about so many things, and when I, for example, meet people, like older people, they're not even aware that this is a problem for students. They were really like, and there's so much pressure, and like, that we're like vulnerable in that sense. For example, what I was surprised about, I heard in the radio that the government advertises that you should just shower like 5 minutes and so. And I was like, all right, but you, like in the news, you do not even hear something about students being homeless and this crisis. It's more like, oh yeah, please save our energy and, you know, take care. about that. So that seems more important than really people like living on the street.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe to respond quickly to your point about subletting, and you see here there's this dynamic between regulated housing and unregulated housing, and the more regulated housing is, the more in control corporations or other institutions regulating it want to be. And then it's about the safety issues, with protecting people's rights, and corporations have more control when they know who's in the room, and it's harder when they're subletting. But my experience when I started pushing the agenda on international student housing in my hometown, restrictions on subletting were the first things lifted. It's still restricted in a way, but that's one of the easiest measures at least student housing corporations can take in order to make it more accessible for international students. But the point is, this is an awareness that only just started, and more needs to happen, but it is happening, but we all need to push the effort in order to make it go faster.
That is very interesting to know that we can actually, I mean, I'm a lawyer, of course we can change registration requirements, but hearing that you've done that, because to me they are these huge laws that I just cannot deal with, and I cannot go through them. So this is, it's wonderful to know. Yeah. So I would like to, yes, please.
Yeah, at the risk of being clobbered as a representative of the university.
I just wanted to respond because I'm here because we really hate it when our students come and they come crying, that they can't find a place to live. But I work at the Academy of Arts in The Hague, but we're a small university. We don't have, we're not a housing agency, so we don't have the resources to do anything for you except to point you to, places where you can, look for a room. And we have a Facebook group, and we can send you to, the municipality, and we try to get you a bank account and all this stuff. We do what we can, but we can't create housing. We just don't have a room for you. So I'm not sure what you mean by take your responsibility, because we can't create a room for you. So I think the problem is the housing, and I don't see how you can, what you expect from the school to do that, to fix that for you.
Perhaps you could educate that is what a university should do, or you should be like, what the information I got is what you said, like there's some links, there's a Facebook group. But for example, like this discrimination app, I've never seen. I also don't know that in The Hague there's like a governmental body where you can go to. So like when you come here, you have no idea of your rights, and it's also really difficult to accessible because it's in Dutch, and when you don't speak that, you're excluded.
Yeah, I didn't know the discrimination website either. So, and I do believe there's two different issues being discussed here today. One is housing shortage, and the other is the discrimination and vulnerability of specific groups. So there's two things going through each other. I would just want to address the housing thing. That we need to find more places for people to live, and that's not something we can only inform you as best we can. And that's what we do. And I think the bigger schools have taken this policy of if you can't find a place to live, don't come. And I hear you say that, and with a bit of disdain, like how ridiculous. But I think that's their policy. I'm pretty sure it's their policy to protect you, because we don't want you to come here and then be homeless. That's worse than finding another university. Because we can't create the room for you, so we better warn you, because that's all we can do at the moment.
For my curiosity is, at what point in the registration process do you tell the students that there are no houses available? I mean, do you allow them to pay the registration fee and the tuition, and then tell them there's no housing here?
No. So, okay, we don't. First of all, the Art Academy doesn't apply that rule because we have a very small student population. But I know, the bigger schools do that. So Leiden and The Hague, because they don't want students to come and be homeless. There's no way that they're going to take your tuition and then not give it back to you. There can't be a single misunderstanding about that. If you don't come, you get your tuition back.
Because, I mean, I'm not a student myself, but I'm just saying that I've heard from people, because right now I share a flat with different students, because believe me, being graduated and have few work experiences, a few years of work experience doesn't actually help you to find house in the Netherlands, whether you're international, whether you come from a European state or not. It's just the reality hits everyone. But my sort of curiosity to that is, like, a lot of them said that once they got to the process of finding housing, then they hear from the universities that there's not enough space. And they can offer you, I don't know, this is the University of Amsterdam, by the way, they say they can offer you some kind of tent in the garden for 600, 700 euros a night, a month. So, yeah.
I can't speak for the University of Amsterdam, but you know, but it's just an illustration of how, you know, dire the situation is that they find it necessary to offer you a tent. You know, it's not something we can't solve it either. Universities can't solve it either.
Okay, but I think universities that ask international students to come, they are responsible for accommodation, or they just to arrange it. You can have contracts with housing companies.
But
for instance,
I think you know that we get, you know, a government I mean, we're not like a profit organization. We get government subsidy for the students that study with us, and anything that doesn't go to, you know, quality education. I mean, if you want us to be a housing organization, that it's going to take away from the quality of education. We only have limited funds.
Of course.
So, you know, we don't have a building with rooms for you.
You can make an agreement with organizations who can afford housing.
We're trying, but they told us, you know, it's going to take 2-3 years before something opens up for you. You know, because there is no housing.
Yeah, so we have to, we have to manage the houses and the.
I think Mr. Sital in the front would like to say something.
Yeah, first of all, I think people are aware about it that foreign students outside Europe pay more fee to study in the Netherlands. So that is the money-making protocol behind this, to attract a lot of foreign students here. And secondly is, I have seen advertisement in India for Leiden University every last year, never mentioned that don't come before you find a house. So there is the responsibility of the university. My experience that when my daughter went to London to study at the King's College, first of all we got a list of housing, we registered, then she got the application. And this we can put it to the government, and the government will take care of this. University are making money with foreign students, they are responsible for to take care of their housing and everything. And we are now living in a society that every problem we have, we put it to the government, and the government have to solve it. And
the government can't solve it.
Absolutely, I think then communicate clearly, and I think they have to file a case against the university that you have advertised in Asia, I paid the fee, pay me my fee back, or give a penalty, but that is what students are not doing. So that is, I think, universities are equal responsible for the problem now. Thank you.
Let's take just one more question because we do not have any time left. Maybe the lady in pink.
I think she had her hand up for a while, so
okay,
yeah, I think that's more fair.
I'm so sorry, we're running out of time, so
I'll be quick, I
thank
promise. My question would be addressed to the lady who is representing the organization who drafted the action plan. How have you identified the stakeholders? Because, I mean, also non-EU students, for example, they contribute a lot to the economy by paying their tuition fees, by the way, 5 to 9 times higher than the EU students. Plus, they bring a lot of money because they contribute here. And also, I think that your plan is not future-proof. Maybe it solves the problem, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years, but then you are also affecting the quality of Dutch education because by bringing non-EU
well, not only non-EU, but international students, you're also contributing to higher innovation. And this is also one of the reasons why Dutch universities are so good. And by not offering, for example, anymore those English-speaking programs that you talked before, then you're not going to have the same amount of innovation as before, which, by the way, brings money into the economy. So
yes, we will not stop by with English studies or something. That's not the goal. We want to be more selective. For instance, you have psychology as a study. We have enough psychologists in Holland. Why should we give it in English? That's just an example. We have to be more selective. It's not about. We don't want to stop the international student to come. That's not the point. Absolutely not.
What kind of values are you? Sorry. What kind of values are you taking into regard when you say selecting? Like selecting based on what?
Well, selective. Well, to have the same number of houses as the same as the number of students. We just have to. We have to solve this problem. The increase of the students is for 95% because of the international students. We know it. So the increase every year, the next 8 years, is because of the international students. It's just yes, we can't go on like this. That's the point. We don't want to stop this. We want to control it more.
I am very, very sorry to interrupt, and this has been fascinating. However, we only have the room reserved, well, until 5. It's been more than 10 minutes after, sorry. Thank you, everyone. This was amazing. I would like to invite Lena up on stage one last time to wrap up.
We're both really sorry. Jim and I were bringing constant eye contact to stop this. Please know that this is not the end. We are inviting you to watch this off. I think everyone can hear me, right? Okay, so please, we have some of our people to thank Jim first and for all. I want to say that. Let me do that first. So I wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to you for moderating today, for initiating this, the survey first, then the report, for leading us all through this. This is thank you from us.
To do this. I experienced a horrible problem and we turned it into something. Thank you, Mr. Sital, for this opportunity, and thank you to all of our speakers for being here with us today, and thank you to everyone who has attended with their amazing questions.
Thank you to the speakers as well. And please know that you can ask all of the questions remaining downstairs. We have our team guiding you to the drinks, to the snacks. You can continue this conversation.
And before we finish, we would also like to say a big thank you to
Let's get some drinks.
Let's get drinks downstairs, yes.
That's been great.
It's a nice evening, huh?
I gave this to you, man.
Oh, sorry, I had it.
Sono moltissimo.
Information
I forgot to put my mic.